Welcome into another edition of the James Boyd Podcast. I, of course, am James Boyd, joined by my editor, Jim Aiello. And Jim, there is lots to talk about. The Colts made some moves. I wish I had some music, like some trumpets.
I'm dancing. That's yeah. I'm
Because you called it. And I will take the L. I was pessimistic. I was like, they won't do it. I will have to see it to believe it. You ain't fooling me. And I was the busiest man alive yesterday as the Colts
you were indeed.
got
I think you and
busy.
Alec Lewis with the Vikings, man. Those guys were all and the Bears had a few things, but yeah, God, it was a busy day. But I will take the flowers. No, because honestly, Chris Ballard sounded like a changed man. Honestly, he sounded like a changed man. He really beat himself up after the season at the combine when he talked to you guys. It felt like there was a change in direction and change of philosophy coming. I believed him. Like I said, like I said on the last podcast we did, I believed him. I thought he was going to do things just a little bit differently. He said he wasn't going to spend 400 million, but guys spent. I don't even know. He's closing in on 150 for
Ooh.
the at this point. So signing big and got some impact players at some really important spots. We'll talk about all of them. Obviously, Daniel Jones, Cam Bynum, Travarius Ward. I like the fits of all of them, given their different skill sets and kind of how they're going to play into Indy's future. But yes, to get back to your point, and the point I want to talk about most, of course, is I was right, and I'm going to enjoy that. No,
No,
okay.
you were right. And I
I'm
guess we
living it
can,
up.
before we get into how right you were, because you predicted some big signings when it came to the secondary and being aggressive and
Yeah.
trying to win now. Obviously, the biggest news heard, I believe, around the league would be Daniel Jones coming to Indianapolis on a 1 year deal.
Yeah.
I believe it's 1 year, $14 million around that mark with the, upside of $17 million, but that's the base salary. And I will say, after we saw kind of how the free agency market went with quarterbacks on day one, all signs pointed to Daniel Jones basically choosing whether he wants to stay in Minnesota or
Yep.
come to Indianapolis. I mean, you saw Justin Fields go to the Jets. You saw Sam Darnold go to Seattle, and obviously Geno Smith get traded to the Raiders, and just all this quarterback movement where there just weren't a lot of options left. And then there will be, I assume, some guy, some name out there that is the odd man out. Like, what is
Yep.
where does Aaron Rodgers go? Where does Russell Wilson go? Like all these different questions that they have. But for the Colts purposes, Daniel Jones is quote unquote the real competition that Indianapolis was looking for. He's the face that we can now put next to the name of this quote unquote. And I'm going to keep saying that because I don't know if I believe it, but the open
Yeah. I
QB
can tell.
competition. So, and I'm warming up to the idea of it being an open competition, but I will say, Jim, I'm just not fully there yet as far as it being a full blown 50-50 shot. However, it is significant and it is a big deal because we now have a guy who has had success in the NFL.
Yep.
Obviously, he struggled in the NFL. He flamed out with the Giants, but
Yep.
overall, he has had more success easily than Anthony Richardson has had in his NFL career, and then more than the Colts have had recently, whether it's any quarterback not named Phillip Rivers in the recent years. So, your thoughts on them going out, getting Daniel Jones, and basically telling AR, this is who you got to beat.
Well, I got to play my own victory lap music for you because I
Oh,
believe in your 10 step and your 10 yeah.
there you go. Dun, 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 dun.
the
You know
in your
what's
10
crazy?
step.
I
Yeah.
truly did not remember the 10 steps plan. Like I remember it now, but like when you tagged me in that, I was like, oh yeah, I was right. So it was not in the moment where I'm telling people like, yeah, I knew it. No, I had forgot all about that. So it was nice to be reminded that every now and then I get a little lucky.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I will say I think on your 10 step plan, and we'll get into all this, but you've laid out pretty much what the offseason has been. I know you had them like cutting Braden Smith and they restructured. But Ebukam, we'll see on how that goes. But like signing a safety, you had Holland, they ended up with Bynum. Like signing a veteran corner, you kind of thought, hey, they might go a little cheaper. They went with Ward. Like I actually think you've been right on it in terms of how they would approach this offseason. And so yeah, but that was the one you nailed, right on the button was Daniel Jones. I like it for many reasons. I really am a big fan of this, and this is coming from a guy who edits the Giants and has watched a lot of Daniel Jones and knows that he struggled. He actually had a couple of nice moments last year. If you go back and look at his numbers and watch his games from like weeks 2 to 5 or 6, he looked pretty good. He was actually kind of like mid pack. Was starting to gain some confidence and momentum, and then the offensive line got banged up and things kind of got off the rails there. So that was a problem. But let's start with the money. I like the money because the money makes it look real. And it might, again, even if you don't believe it's real, and I do think they're having an open competition, but it makes it look real. It looks real to Anthony Richardson. It looks real to Anthony Richardson's teammates that they know Anthony Richardson is not going to get handed the job. The $14 million is a significant chunk of change. I think it's up to 17 or whatever with incentives, and I assume that's if he plays a bunch. But that's a real amount of money for a low end starting quarterback in the NFL. So Richardson will have to win, and the money proves that. So I like that a lot. Daniel Jones, I think I've said this on every podcast since we've started talking about bringing in competition, is that he is a guy who was beloved by his teammates with the Giants. They're going to love the way he works with Indy. He's going to fit right in with a lot of these guys who, again, he's going to be the first one in, last one out. He's going to be a perfect example for Anthony Richardson. Again, I know that's stupid cliches, but it's really what Anthony Richardson needs to learn how to be a professional NFL quarterback. And Daniel Jones is that. He truly, truly is. His teammates love him. And again, I know I said this 1,000 times. He knows what it's like to lose a franchise. He knows what it's like to be drafted to be the guy and have it all taken away from him. And Anthony Richardson's going to look at him and he can either ask him or not, but he's going to know this could be my future, right? He got paid at least by the Giants. Richardson isn't even close to that right now. He could look at, or should look at, Daniel Jones and say, this is my future, the ghost of, a Christmas future here, and saying like, I could be this guy if I don't figure my stuff out. And I think that's a great reality check for Anthony Richardson. How do you feel about that aspect of it? Because I know you're not a big Daniel Jones guy, but I don't know. I'm curious how you feel about like just the idea of the reality Richardson has to face now.
Yeah, so I would say I don't know too many people who are big Daniel Jones guys, mainly because of just
Fair.
his up and down career. However, to your point, I would say, and I think we're kind of on the same page here. I have argued that he is real competition for Anthony. I've had this debate, whether it's with you or not debate, but this conversation, whether it was with you, whether it's on the radio, whether it's with my friends, whether it's on social media. And I'm like, the people who keep saying like, oh, that's not real competition. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Pretty much any quarterback in the NFL who's had, one season of success has had more seasons of success than Anthony Richardson. And I mean that just honestly. I think Anthony Richardson is a great human being, great guy, but he's not a great player. He hasn't had even a great month in the NFL. He's had moments, he's had games, but games might even be a stretch. He's had moments. The one
Right.
game is the Jets game. But other than that, he's struggled for the most part. So
Yeah.
I think that bringing in someone who's, been to the playoffs, who won a playoff game, is real competition. And like I said, he's done it more recently than the Colts franchise. The last time that the Giants went to the playoffs was 2022. Daniel Jones was their quarterback. He won a game in the playoffs. The Colts haven't been to the playoffs since 2020. They haven't won a game since 2018. Some guy like Andrew Luck, who's now a general manager for a college team, which wasn't even a thing when he was still playing, years ago. That's how long it's been. Like the landscape of college football and like athletics has changed since the Colts were last won a playoff game.
Yeah.
I was graduating college in 2018, and now I'm like, getting gray hairs. So I say all that to say, I like it. I like the move, and I don't want to say it's me being naive, but I just think that if you are truly as competitive as Anthony Richardson claims himself to be, which I think he is, you embrace this.
Yeah.
And I look at it like this, and I kind of, not to get on a tangent, but that's kind of how my parents raised me. It's like you have to have a healthy level of like F you when it comes to competition or people being up against you. I view it that same way in writing. It's like, hey, me against this other guy, me against Mike Chappell or Stephen Holder. Like we're competing at the end of the day, and I embrace that. I like that. And so obviously I'm not a professional athlete. It's not the same thing at all. But I would imagine it's even more so that way because of the nature of your business. Like there's room for me and you, Jim, to talk about the Colts. There's room for me and Joel and me and Chap to talk about the Colts. There's only room for one guy to play quarterback in the NFL for your team.
That's right.
Like there is no dual threat. There is no two quarterback systems. It's you're the guy or not. And so I think that this is a good motivator if you're a competitor to say, okay, you guys don't believe in me, and maybe they shouldn't. I'm going to prove to you why that was a bad decision. I'm going to come out here. I'm going to ball. I'm going to prove to you why that $14 million was a waste of money. And if you can't do that, if you can't beat Daniel Jones out for the starting job, then as I've written and as I'll say here right now, you were never going to be the franchise quarterback.
Yep.
You were going to be a bust. You were going to be a miss. I'm not saying Anthony Richardson is that now because I truly believe a lot can change in a year. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I mean, Sam Darnold, one great year with the Vikings, he's got $100 million. I should have
Yep.
worked on my swing a little bit more. Or, swing, I'm sorry, not swing, but arm.
Yeah.
Maybe ate my Wheaties and things like that and try to get a little bigger. Because I'm like, dang, one good year. Seriously. Jordan Love, really good player, but he had like the right breakout year at the right time and he got paid. And so I say that to say, if Anthony has a strong season, and I will say he's up against the eight ball because so much has to change, you have to be, accurate. You have to be available. You have
Yep.
to obviously be mature in your role. We can't hear any more rumblings about you not working hard. All those things has to change. But if they do, which is still a possibility, then you're set, man. Like you've proved yourself. But I think it all kind of boils down to this being a really big make or break year 3 for Anthony Richardson and how he'll respond to it. Now, I believe he spoke to Tom Pelissero. That's Anthony's agent, by the way, who I'm referring to, Derek Jackson. Derek Jackson. And he said, Anthony's ready to roll. And so that to me lets people know, like, okay, for the crowd who's like, oh, should he demand a trade? No, there is no leverage for that. You don't demand anything when you have Anthony Richardson's career so far in the NFL. And the Colts should not give up on him. People are asking me, like, should they just move on now? And I'm like, no.
No.
Daniel Jones on a 1-year deal. And then I look at it like this, Jim, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I'll let you weigh in actually right now. I like that it's a 1-year deal, not 2 or 3 or whatever, not a 2-year deal. Because I thought that if Daniel Jones pushed for a 2-year deal somewhere, he might have been able to get it. But my point is, I like that it's 1 year, mainly
Yep.
because if it doesn't work out and Daniel Jones has to step in for Anthony Richardson, then you're probably restarting anyways.
Yeah.
Like, in your mind, let's say Daniel Jones wins the job. Is he their long-term answer at quarterback? Like, I don't think so.
No. 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 I mean, not unless he has like the Sam Darnold type of like
That's what I'm saying.
incredible,
And
or
do
the
you
Baker
expect
Mayfield.
that? Like,
No. No. You
it's
can't
it's
expect that.
hard. It's hard.
No. No. You don't expect that going in. I don't think Chris Ballard made this signing with the expectation that Daniel Jones is going to become their like long term answer there. It's an option. Again, like the Baker Mayfield thing happened, the Geno Smith thing happened, the Sam Darnold thing happened. It's possible,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think you want to go down that road with Daniel Jones. The Giants did. They had that one magical run in 2022 that gave him all that money and that really backfired. So I don't know that you'd want to go a huge amount of money on Daniel Jones, even if he starts next year and even if he ends up playing really, really well. I think you want to try to go year to year on that. You're probably right. You're probably starting over. So I guess a worst case scenario is that they win like 9 or 10 games with Daniel Jones and they can't decide if they want to pay him. They're not really in position to draft anybody. And so, but we'll get into that another time. But ultimately, man, I'm with you. Like I said, if you can't, and I think the main point is this: if Richardson can't win this competition, then he's not a franchise quarterback. It's just that, and at least not in Indianapolis. Maybe he goes somewhere else and things change for him too. Just like all these other guys. But like, ain't happening in Indy. So I like the move. And I think this might transition us into the next topic a little bit. I just like that Chris Ballard has been honest. Honestly, like he has been. He's told us what he was going to do, and he did it. He said he was
Yeah.
going to change his philosophy in free agency. He did. He told us he was going to bring in competition for Anthony Richardson. He did. Like I, you can still doubt Chris Ballard. You should still doubt Chris Ballard because it's been 8 years of not good enough.
Right.
But in year 9, I will say he's doing things differently, and I'll give him credit for that because he needed to do things differently, and we've started to see a new approach from him. Not to say that he was like a liar before, but just to say that he said he was going to be different, and he has shown that.
Oh, he definitely has. I mean, now we can transition into beyond the quarterback move, which again, I think from a national scale is the big story because, as a casual fan of other teams, because I can only really focus on this one team that I cover, especially during the season. I don't watch a ton of games outside of Colts games because it's just the nature of the job. I get it. Like Daniel Jones, quarterback, joins another team with Anthony Richardson, quarterback, big deal. But I would argue, not even argue, I think the real fact is The bigger, more notable moves for the actual team building, team construction, team success is the two defensive backs they picked up.
Yep.
And I mean, this is different. This is very different from Chris Ballard. And I'll tell you, I'll give you all the breakdown of how different it really was for me. So they go out and get Cam Bynum, which I'm like, okay, solid pickup. Pound that story out, get to working, blah, blah. And, me and Jim probably sent, I don't know, 100 Slack messages in the last few days. And then I go to make, some pizza or like pop pizza in the oven, not cooking during free agency because I can't be standing over the stove trying to, use minced garlic and things like that. And I got to stop mid, cooking to do breaking news. But I'm like, all right, let me warm up pizza. And as soon as I get done with that, they sign, or they not sign, but they agreed to terms with Travarius Ward. And that to me, that's when we both were like, oh, okay, this is totally different. This isn't we just signed one guy. Okay, big deal, whoop de doo. I think the
Right.
reaction we both had kind of reflected the fan base as well because they were like, oh man, this guy is like for real. And
Yeah.
so I'll start with Bynum because he was the first guy that came to the Colts. I do like his game. I think he's a versatile player, a durable player, which is key because Julian Blackman, very good player, not durable. I think that obviously his time in
Yeah.
Indianapolis is over now. However, Cam Bynum seems to be someone who can fit that Lou Anarumo type of scheme. That's multifaceted. You're going to ask him to do a lot of things. Can you play man coverage? Can you play zone? Can you tackle? All these cool little tricks of the trade that Lou Anarumo will do. He seems to have thrived in it already with Brian Flores out there in Minnesota, who's another, forward thinking, innovative defensive mind. But from your perspective, Jim, like, what do you just think about what he'll do to elevate that back end? Because to me, I was like, oh, again, this isn't just, oh, okay, he's like a second tier guy. He's a stopgap like Rodney McLeod. No, this
Yeah.
is the guy who's 26. And they signed him to I believe a 4-year deal. So
Hmm.
he's expected to be around. Ideally, you'd like to see him play that entire deal out. So what's your reaction to them spending big, the biggest, Ballard outside free agent signing ever? You
Like
know
double almost. Yeah.
exactly. So I'm just curious to know, like, just how you felt about it.
No, I love the fit. I said I really like Cam Bynum. He wasn't my number one safety target, but I think when we were both going into the free agency, we were both thinking our number one targets are certainly not who Chris Ballard is going to pursue in free agency because that's not what he does. He usually bargain bins shops. But this, and again, this was so I might have liked Justin Reed maybe a little better. I might have liked Javon Holland maybe a little bit better, but like I really like the Cam Bynum fit. The main reason for me is that, and you wrote about it, I like that he came from a multiple scheme already. I like that he played with Brian Flores. Brian Flores has very particular players that kind of fit what he does, which is everything. He does a lot of different things, and he
Yeah.
asks his players to be very versatile and do a lot of different kinds of things. From what we understand of Lou Anarumo, and again, I would encourage people to go back and listen to your conversation with Paul Daner after they hired Lou Anarumo. I think that's probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 podcasts ago on the James Boyd podcast feed. But go back and listen because Paul provided a great breakdown of how important the safety position is in Lou Anarumo's scheme, and I think he nailed it, frankly, because Chris Ballard thought the same exact thing, and
Mm-hmm.
Lou Anarumo must have told him the same exact thing. It's like, hey, I need real high level safeties in my scheme to make this thing go. I mean, you've mentioned Jesse Bates a bunch of times. I don't think anyone thinks Cam Bynum's going to be Jesse Bates, but your point has been valid in that he has a veteran, high IQ, I think very athletic type player in the back end who can do a lot of different things. He can play near the line of scrimmage. He can cover that deep third if they need him to. I mean, there's just, like I said, he's just the kind of guy that can solve a lot of problems. I think Lou Anarumo has talked about Jesse Bates in that way. He solved a lot of problems for us. He checked a lot of boxes for us. They didn't really have that kind of guy with the Colts. I think Nick Cross is an athletic player, young player,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think he is probably better playing near the line, closer to the line of scrimmage. And now Cam Bynum is a guy who I think can do that, but also is probably better on the back end. Allows you to have more of that center fielder type if you need it. So I thought the fit was really, really, really good. And again, I just can't stop saying this. I really credit Chris Ballard for, again, targeting a need and not cheaping out, not going to the bargain bin to try to find this spot. Like, if you want to win and you want to get better quick, again, I understand you have to overpay in free agency. Is Cam Bynum a $60 million player? Probably not. He's probably not a $60 million player, but that's what it costs in free agency. And sometimes you have to overspend to get quality players on your team. And the Colts did.
And they double dipped. They double dipped. They doubled. They pulled a U-turn. They put it in reverse and came back and came back to the store and said, "Oh, you know what? I want that too." And I was like, "Oh man, Chris Ballard is out here shopping." And I'm like, "This man usually, I to give you all a visual. Chris Ballard was, for the first couple years I've been on the beat, the coupon lady, the coupon dude. You get up to the counter, they taking all freaking day because they're clipping coupons to save, pennies and nickels and whatever else. And in all seriousness, I understand people who seriously want to save some money. So you got coupons for Kroger, Meyer,
I
Aldi.
use my Meyer. Heck yeah, man.
My M-Perks, I have M-Perks, Jim. I am growing up. I am learning. But I'll say that to say this time he went to like, okay, I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to the Louis store. I'm going to, the Coach store. I'm going somewhere where I got to spend some money.
Yep.
I'm not going to the factory outlet. I'm going to the high end. I'm going to the fashion mall here in Indianapolis. That is the most expensive place I've ever been in my life. When they have a bunch of stores that I go through and just window shop like 50 Cent once did. So all of that to say, to see him double dip was surprising, but also the caliber of player, because Javarius Ward, first of all, I've watched the interviews about him. He first got on my feed because of the tragedy he went through last October, lost his daughter. She's 1 year old, Amani Joy. She passed away. And he was very open about the trauma he still feels about being in California, how hard it was on his family. Nearly lost his son, his junior. Thankfully, now the boy is healthy, but he's been through a lot in California. So the writing was on the wall that he was going to leave anyway. And that, coupled with a couple of injuries last year, kind of tapered off his play. Because in 2023, he was a second-team All-Pro. 2024, down season for him. Still 7 pass breakups, which was better than, what most of, the Colts DBs had this past year. And I do think that with a clearer mindset, obviously being healthier, and then having played for championship-level organizations with the 49ers and the Chiefs, he's played 3 Super Bowls. He's won 1. I mean, this is a guy who, again, raises the standard like Bynum does. And to me, no questions asked. You talk about competition. It's competition being added to the roster, but also a big dog is kind of how I look at it. Like, he's coming in to compete, but everyone knows he's a starter. So one spot's already gone. Yeah. Like last year when Chris Ballard was like, I like our guys. They're young. They got to play. Dallas Flowers. Oh, nah. We're not hearing none of that this year. This dude is coming in, and he got paid like it, to be a guy who can contribute right away and raise your level of winning. I looked at him, looked at Bynum, those additions. I was like, the Colts are actually trying to win. Now, you might look up a year from now, 2 years from now, and say, man, they really overpaid for those 2 players. They didn't work out, whatever the case may be. But for right now, today, I think Colts fans are excited because they're like, you know what? This guy actually got some skin in the game, and he got us some dudes. Because you can talk about X's and O's all day. But, to kind of tie it all together, Lou Anarumo struggled in Cincinnati when his best players left the building.
Yep.
And so I understand that Gus Bradley might not have been the answer at DC, and I still think they should have moved on. But the support that Lou Anarumo has gotten in the last couple of months, by these 2 moves alone, is more than Gus Bradley has gotten through his entire 3-year tenure. As far as playmakers go. Seriously.
Like, I know. You're right up. You're right up in the Travarius Ward thing. Made me laugh as I was editing it because you were like, pour one out for Gus Bradley because it was just like, hey man, this guy never got this kind of help.
Dude, I remember asking him at the end of the season, I'm like, do you have the guys to do your defense? And you could say his defense is archaic or it's outplayed, or you know what, he had a great collection of talent with the Legion of Boom. You're never going to replicate that. So maybe his success in the NFL is skewed because of that. However, he did not get that kind of support last year or the year before.
No.
So I say all that to say, man, Ward is a player. And I expect him to be someone who can challenge this room and really raise the standard. And just the last thing I'll make a point about Ward is 17 playoff games in his career, 28. That's more than the rest of the Colts cornerback room combined. And to give you all, and Kenny Moore, I think has played in, 2 or 3. And then I also think that in the
Buck's been a bunch.
Yeah, exactly. He's played, but I'm talking about the cornerback room alone.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys haven't played. I mean, David Long, who some of you might not even know, played in like 6 playoff games. But again, these are
Yeah.
like special team snap. Like this dude started in Super Bowls. He's gonna
Yeah.
elevate the room. So again, what'd you think of how they built their secondary, or rather elevated it? I mean, quite considerably. What from a play standpoint, money standpoint, mindset standpoint, all of those things overlapping. Like, how'd you feel about just the aggressiveness and adding Ward as well?
I love Travarius Ward. I've always loved. I loved him when he was in Kansas City. I loved him when he was. Again, this is the Bears fan of me as a kid. Definitely wanted, like, when he was a free agent. I was hoping the Bears would go after him. I'm a huge fan of Travarius Ward. I love the way he plays. He's physical. He's huge, by the way. If you just look at the Pro Football Reference, this guy, like, he's not one of those small corners, man. He's not 5'10", buck 70, buck 80. He is 6'1", 196, at least according to Pro Football Reference. Like, you want somebody that's going to go one-on-one with Nico Collins? There you go. That's your guy. That's the size that you need to guard a guy like Nico Collins. He's not going to out physical you. So, not promising Travarius Ward's going to lock down Nico Collins. He is an excellent receiver. But what I like most about this is the way the depth chart shakes out. Well, I should say that's the second thing. Number one thing you already hit. My favorite thing is I love that he walks in with a friggin' ring on his finger and championship pedigree and looks around and goes, "This is not the standard if you want to win a championship, and I know what it is." Like, love that. Number one. Number
Yeah,
two, I just like the way that this shakes out the depth chart. So obviously you got Kenny in the slot, you got Travarius Ward as your main number one outside corner. Now, Chris Ballard, now you can take all the shots and swings you want on young, interesting guys to be your number two corner. Now, ideally, would you have a better number two corner or a surefire thing? Absolutely. But it is okay if you have to cycle in Juju Brents or Sam Womack or somebody else and just figure it out. Jalen Jones, whoever it ends up being, is your number two corner. But I don't mind experimenting and letting guys play in certain spots if it's your number two corner. You can't do that with both spots, which is what the Colts were doing last year. Both outside corner spots were very much up in the air, and you got really inconsistent play from pretty much all of the guys. Sometimes you got, Sam Womack had his moments, Jalen Jones had his moments, but, like, for the most part, very inconsistent play. Now you're going to get somebody who's going to give you consistent play week in and week out as your number one corner on the outside. You know what you're going to give him Kenny Moore on the inside. And that's like something that Lou Anarumo is going to take advantage of. He loves having an excellent slot. He had one for years with Mike Hilton with the Bengals. So, again, I just love the way the depth chart shakes out. I'm looking at the Colts depth chart now, and I'm the defensive depth chart, and man, like, I like it. Like, I like where they're at now. Could they use another cover linebacker? Sure. I still don't mind giving Jalen Carlisle like an actual look. Maybe you add a veteran or another rookie in the draft. Do you think you maybe need to add a little more defensive tackle depth? Maybe maybe a little more edge depth after you lose to Iowa Dangbo to the Bears. Like, sure, but I don't have any major glaring issues. And if Ebukam comes back better than I guess we all expect, then maybe your edge depth's okay. But again, I just look at the defense right now. I'm looking at the depth chart and saying, Lou, if you can't work with that, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, this is a pretty good depth chart. Not to say it's an all, star-studded all-pro team, not the 49ers of a couple of years ago or
nah,
anything, but it's a good team. It's a good defense. It's got enough players, enough playmakers to make it different. I mean, they should threaten to be a top half of the league defense, if not better, with the guys they have in the room now. So
yeah,
I'm a big fan of the move. I truly am. Like I said, you expect some guys to take a step forward. You need Cross to take a step forward. You need one of those other corners to emerge. You need Kwity Paye and Leatu Latu to keep growing. Definitely, you need some things, but with veterans they have, the stars they have up front, and combined with the guys they just added on the back end, there's no reason this defense shouldn't be a top half of the league defense.
yeah. To put a button on that, I think that Jalen Jones is the other starting cornerback right now on the depth chart.
Yeah.
And it's his job to lose in my eyes. And where does that mean
Okay.
for Sam Womack? I think Juju Brents is really behind now. And a point that Kevin Bowen made earlier on 107 Pop the Fan, which was, I thought, brutally honest. They acted as if Juju Brents isn't on the team.
Good.
Like, these moves were like, they were made with the idea of like, all right, it's good that we have him. He's a depth piece now. The idea of him being a starter on this team is gone. Like, for him to earn that job again, he's going to have to do some serious work over the summer to earn it. Because I don't think Jalen Jones is a bad, starting cornerback either. I think that he's, shown more, obviously, than
Yeah.
Juju Brents with the injuries. But they acted with a sense of urgency and I think realism that we just haven't seen in the past. Last year, they were banking on Dallas Flowers coming back from a torn Achilles and being not only healthy and fully himself, but to take a step forward. That didn't happen. I remember the diving tackle attempt he made against Brian Thomas Jr., which became a meme
Yeah.
when he scored an 85-yard touchdown, and everyone knew, like, why would you eat like that play that meme should have never been created because you should never relied on him like that. Now I will say, much praise I'm giving Ballard. I'm like, I got a little side eye with going with Samson Ebukam because I'm like, all right, Achilles,
Yeah.
30 years old. I don't know.
Yeah.
But as far as the secondary goes, the defensive moves that have made so far, it shores up the back end. And also, it frees you up probably to not address those needs early in the draft. You can probably focus more on offense and trying to help Anthony Richardson, where, they'll need some help. And I guess it leads me to our next point.
Yeah.
So the Minnesota Colts picked up two players, and Ryan Grigson
Yeah.
is just poaching some of the Colts
That's
players.
true.
And I don't know if poaching is the right word because obviously players choose where they want to go. But Ryan Kelly, which we all kind of knew this was like his last, run in Indianapolis, 9 years, longest senior player. He's now agreed to terms with the Vikings, as well as Will Fries, who got a massive payday to go there as well. And so now the Colts will have to figure out what's next at right guard, which we have some thoughts about. But
Yeah.
before we get into what the Colts are going to do, Ryan Kelly, yes, we all kind of assume that, Will Fries, I was kind of like, 50-50. He could come back. He could go on. He's going to have a robust market. But to see 5 years, $88 million, what was your reaction to that? And do you think that he priced himself out of the Colts' market?
Yeah, I do. Which in like a normal year, I think I would probably criticize Ballard for. I would say like where else like don't let your own guys out the building and bring them back and don't get priced out of your own guys. But having spent the money he did in the secondary and on quarterback, and I still don't think they're probably done spending. I bet they'll make a few more additions, nothing big or splashy. I can understand letting Will Fries walk for that amount of money. I still wasn't shocked. The guard market's been taken off the last couple of years. I mean, I still am looking back at the Robert Hunt deal with the Dolphins. It was 5 years for $100 million. Obviously, he was only 40 something guaranteed. I can't remember exactly, but it's a crazy market right now. And we talked about this many times on the podcast as well. There were so many teams that needed interior offensive line help. And now when I was saying that, I was picturing the Vikings because we all saw what happened when they lost Christian Darrisaw. They couldn't. Yeah, I know he was their left tackle, but the thing fell apart from the inside out. And when they didn't have the left tackle, everything just went awry for them. So they know how good of a team they can
Right.
be when they have good offensive line help. It's crazy to me that he's reuniting with Ryan. Ryan Grigson drafted Ryan Kelly, which is crazy. Just crazy to think about. That feels like 100 years ago. But
Yeah, that was Kelly's first year, and then
yeah,
obviously, but that was also Grigson's last year as Colts
yes,
GM.
he was the last first round pick for Ryan Grigson. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I'm happy for Ryan and for Will Fries in terms of just being able to move on and playing next to each other in Minnesota's revamped offensive line. It does bring up the question, though, like you said, what are the Colts going to do at right guard? Now, it's not they don't have any answers. They do have Matt Gonzalez, who did play some tackle for them last year and played pretty well. I think you and I were both maybe okay with cutting Braden Smith and seeing what you had in Gonzalez at right tackle. Now, they obviously restructured Braden Smith's deal, so he'll be back starting at right tackle, we'd all have to presume. And my guess is their plan is to either add a guard in free agency still, somebody who could start, or let Gonzalez try to win the job in camp, and maybe they add a swing tackle to back up Braden Smith and Ryman at the tackle spots and give yourself depth that way. Now, Chris Ballard has been pretty good at identifying mid-round, second, third, fourth round offensive linemen of late. Tanner
Yeah.
Bortolini's going to be the starting center. He was a mid-round pick. I mean, Gonzalez himself was a mid-round pick. Ryman was a mid-round pick. So he's done a pretty good job of this. I think maybe he's counting on himself to be able to do this again. That's tough, but maybe he is. But maybe, and you and I talked about it right before we fired this thing up, kind of think puts offensive line back in play in the first round. Frankly, like you could talk me into drafting a tackle, letting him learn and develop behind Braden Smith for as long as Braden Smith is healthy and feeling good, and then you plug him in at right tackle. And you and I both agree that they should extend Ryman sooner rather than later and have you have your bookend tackles there. Again, doesn't necessarily solve the right guard issue, but I think you and I both looked into him a little bit, the pre-draft scouting, and I think I don't know if you have it up in front of you, but
Yes, I do.
our own
I do.
Dane Brugler was optimistic about Gonzalez's ability to slide inside the guard.
Yes, I'll read this real quick. Here's what Dane Brugler, who I just consider like the Batman of the draft, whenever the signs start going up for the combine, it's like the bat signal. I'm going to see Dane Brugler and I'm going to get some insight. So he says about this with Matt Gonzalez. Overall, Gonzalez has several skills that will translate to tackle in the NFL, but a move inside to guard as a phone booth blocker should better accentuate his size, strength, and play style. He projects as an NFL reserve who can provide depth at multiple positions. Now, obviously, the multiple positions part has kind of been checked. He played left tackle last year for the Colts for a couple games, did a handful of games at right tackle, and now I'm not saying that they're saying this is what's going to happen, but I would at least have to think
Yeah.
they're going to explore that option of kicking him back inside and seeing if he could excel there. And honestly, Jim, if they're going to do that, it clearly is better to do it now than to try to wait until the season or something like that. Do it now.
Yeah.
Figure it out now. The movements are different. I mean, I remember having a conversation with, it might have been Matt or it might have been somebody else in the offensive line, but one of my favorite things to do whenever I'm kind of bored or not much going on or it's a Friday and everyone's trying to just get
Yeah.
out of there, I'll just ask guys like, what's something about your job, your position that the general public doesn't know? And the level of detail that they will get into to basically like give you a PhD in football is crazy. So I'll say all that to say, like you can think, oh, right tackle, right guard, how hard can it be? It's hard. It is not a simple transition. The blocking things are different. The block techniques are different. How you step, where you step, the cohesiveness of the whole offensive line. It all changes based
Yep.
off of you moving one spot. So if you can get a jump start on that, then that's a good thing. And so I do think that's one option for the Colts to kind of figure out like what's the plan after Will Fries. However, to your point, yes, I think depth is key. You have to go out there. I would still try to sign and I get it. At this point, you look at some of the guard options out there, they're probably going to be older guys or guys coming off injuries, or you're not going to get
Yeah.
like the perfect guy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be, on the free agent market, especially
Sure.
beyond yesterday when all the big fish got snapped up. But sign someone who might be a little bit flawed, but has proven they can at least do it perhaps at a higher level than Dalton Tucker did last year or Mark Glowinski did last year. I mean, shout out to
Yeah.
those guys for stepping up, but I think we all kind of saw towards the end of the year, especially when Braden Smith went out with his personal reasons, the right side of the offensive line really started giving them some problems, particularly at right guard. So if you can find somebody who has, started a bunch of games there, had some success there, then I think you should do that, as well as potentially, drafting somebody or, which I think is probably the simplest answer, or perhaps not I won't say simplest, but like the most in your face answer, moving Matt Gonzalez inside. You don't draft the guy in the third round anyway to not have him play, for him to
Yeah.
be a backup. You draft him because you expect him to be a starter someday.
Yep.
And so I'm very curious to see how they kind of move now because, well, we actually didn't hit on this, but like the Colts do still have a decent amount of money left, I believe, in free agency. I'm not sure on the exact number because of the structure of the deals. I know that Cam Bynum's deal has been reported already. It's backloaded. So his cap hit this year is only $7 million. So that to me kind of gives me I'm like, okay, let me, scratch my head and kind of think a little bit like Ballard, what are you up to? But it tends to me to be at least a little bit more flexibility in the cap space than perhaps we might know just definitively,
Yeah.
mainly because of how the deals are structured. Like whenever people ask me that stuff, it's like, look,
Yeah.
man, I wish I could tell you. Like, I mean, to be completely honest, it's hard to sometimes get the numbers from different sources and things like that.
Yeah.
But the actual like contract layout, that's even harder to get because it's such a just a unique to each player. Like just because I think all of us do it. I mean, I do it all the time. Whenever a guy gets a huge contract, the first thing I'm doing is dividing by 4 or 5 to see what it is annually. But that's not really how it works in real life. Like some guys get paid more early on or more later or, guaranteed money, void years, all of those things. And so I say all that to say, I think that at this point, the Colts free agency splashes will probably slow down a lot. I
Yep.
would expect them to probably pursue some key depth pieces. Hey, maybe they do sign a right guard. Maybe they do sign a linebacker, but nobody that's going to be like super high end or the top guy on the market. I wouldn't expect that. But that is something to be a bit, not I don't say concerned about, but serious about when it comes to the offensive line because you cannot, yes, you invested in your defense. I would imagine at some point you're going to try to upgrade on offense, whether it's through the draft, by drafting a tight end or whatever, but you
Yeah.
cannot sleep on the importance of the offensive line with so much riding on Anthony Richardson. Like, yes, he can avoid sacks with the best of them. I'll give him credit for that. He doesn't take a ton of sacks, but you don't want this kid to be playing in a not kid, grown man, to be playing in a ton of pressure when he's already kind of shaky as a passer. Not even kind of
Yeah.
shaky, he is shaky as a passer.
Yeah.
He's trying to take a step forward. Huge summer coming up for him and his mechanics, all those things. You don't want to compound the stress and the magnitude of year 3 by also having the guy run for his life and saying, okay, just figure it out. Again,
Yeah.
look, every time I do a mock draft and I pick an offensive lineman, and whether it's a day 1 or day 2 pick, I get booed in the comments, or I'll get booed online, or I'll get booed on the radio. But then it's kind of like with Caleb Williams. Everyone last year loved the Bears. Oh my gosh, they have 3 number 1 receivers. How are you going to defend them? Easy. They can't block. And so now you see they reloaded this offseason. So
Yeah.
similar to that, obviously the Colts offensive line, it wasn't as depleted as the Bears, but you don't want it to even get to that point. You want to address these needs, nip it in the bud, and be serious about protecting your young quarterback.
I was looking at the available guards, who they could potentially sign. Mekhi Becton's out there. He was a big success story, obviously, with the Eagles. Reformed, converted, I guess, right tackle from the Jets. I guess reform. When you have to leave the Jets, you're more
I was
reformed
about
at
to say
that point.
reformed. Did the man go to boarding school or what?
Converted right tackle to right guard. Won a championship last year. Really good success story. I get. You might be hesitant to bet on a guy who was surrounded by incredible talent, but
Mhm.
still an option. Tevin Jenkins, I really like. He finally was able to stay pretty healthy for the Bears last year. Is considered kind of a mauler in the run game, which we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that this should still be a run first offense,
Yeah.
behind Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson and or Daniel Jones at this point. But I think you got to keep that in mind. He's got a great reputation as a run blocker. So that's a guy, again, you'd have to probably spend up. I mean, I'm sure he's looking around and saying 88 million for Will Fries. I can get at least 60, 70 million myself. So I don't know if the Bears are going to, or I mean, the Colts are going to spend to that degree. And then there's some other veterans, Brandon Scherf, Kevin Zeitler, guys who are a little bit older who've been around the league. I don't mind that idea. At some point though, you are going to get in the way of like blocking your young guys. So you don't necessarily want to block. If you think Gonzalez can develop into a right guard, then maybe you don't want to block him with somebody that you think is older and is not going to be that good anyway. So
Right.
you kind of have to thread that needle. But I'm with you. This is the defense. It was great. They took care of their needs. I think the biggest thing. I think every GM would say this. You knock out the needs that you have the best way you can in free agency, and that way you go into the draft not forced in any corner. You're not in a hole. Like you don't have to draft anything, right? The Colts probably have to draft a tight end. I would say. It doesn't have to be in the first round, but they have to draft a tight end. I think to improve that room. After that, given what they just added, I don't know that they have to draft anything else. I mean, offensive line depth is good. Defensive line depth is good. Another linebacker would be helpful. Um, Another running back, as you've mentioned many times, like it is important. But I don't think they're in a position where they have to go after anything. So, and that's the position you want to be in going into the draft, is really being able to play the board, seeing what falls to you, and taking the best player available. That's the ideal situation. A lot of teams talk about doing that and really can't. They end up having to kind of pick somebody that fits a need or fills a need for them. But for the Colts, I think you're pretty close to being able to say we could just take the best guy available.
100% agree. I think that, I don't know how the weather is in Chicago. I assume it's pretty good.
It's nice. Yeah.
It is nice outside. I was thinking because I was got off the radio today and I was walking around. I went even went and shot some hoops down there on the court near Gamebridge Fieldhouse, the outdoor court. And I was thinking Chris Ballard should be somewhere with like a strawberry daiquiri or something, enjoying this weather because he did his freaking job. Now I get somebody's gonna groan and be like, "This guy's ridiculous." Obviously, the job's not done. To channel my inner Kobe Bryant, job's not finished, but it was a hell of a start. And then I think, you don't have to take my word for it. Look at his players. Look how they responded. I mean, you got
That's
Kenny
yeah,
Moore.
big point.
Kenny Moore's tweeting out every couple of hours when they made a move. Oh yeah, I think he tweeted out at one point, "This is not an effing drill." No, it's not, brother. This is the real thing, which makes it so significant for this franchise. And then you got DeForest Buckner, who I believe has been unbelievably loyal to Chris Ballard. More than perhaps any player has on this roster.
Absolutely.
Because he could have asked out and no one would even get mad at him for it. Like I tell you all the time, my nickname for him is God's favorite. DeForest Buckner can do no wrong in my eyes. But when that guy who stayed with you, through all the questions, is tweeting out, let him cook, hashtag Chef Ballard. I think that sends a message of, okay, we believe in this guy. And so obviously there's more work to be done because the work is never finished. But I feel pretty good about what the Colts have done so far. I think they're taking it very serious so far.
Yep.
And they've tried to make tangible improvements to their roster instead of banking on, everything going right. No, they went out and kind of created their own luck by adding some good players. And then obviously we'll see what comes with the quarterback competition. Is it open? Is it not? The last thing I'll ask you, Jim, before we get out of here is like, do you really believe that there's a possibility, even if it's small, that Daniel Jones is starting week 1?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, can you explain why?
Yeah, I think, and this is funny coming from I think I'm pretty sure, given the people that I talk to in the Colts world, and that's media and fans, I'm the biggest Anthony Richardson believer left. I think just among the people that I speak with, this is some of the other reporters on the BU. I think I'm the one who's holding out the most amount of hope for him. That said, I think it's entirely possible he comes into training camp or off-season activities maybe, and is not looking like the guy that they need him to be. That he, or worse, he isn't taking this seriously. Like he's still doing the bare minimum in terms of work, which again, he was young last year. I'm willing to write that off as a mistake of youth or being naive or however you want to classify it. He didn't know what he didn't know, and he needs to step up. But he knows now. And if this offseason he doesn't show marked improvement, then yeah, I think the Colts are serious about moving on. I do. I do think that they are serious
Wow.
about giving him competition and say he shows effort wise and leadership wise everything he needs to show. I think the odds of him losing the job are pretty low, just on a pure let's see who passes better and plays better in preseason and training camp. I don't think he's going to lose the competition to Daniel Jones in that way because I think again, you're right. He's got the edge. They want him to succeed. I think where he could lose it is if he doesn't show the intangible stuff. If he doesn't show them enough that he appreciate, if he's not showing the real appreciation and understanding of what it means to be a franchise quarterback in the NFL, yes, I think they would turn to Daniel Jones. But I think that's a small percentage. I think that's a small percentage possibility because I'm holding out hope that he will understand all those things.
All right, I'm gonna be the guy that goes against you because that's just what I do. I like the thorn in your side, whether it's sending in stories.
This thing started with a victory lap for me. I just want you to know.
I know.
So you're coming at the king right now.
I best not miss. Shout out to the wire. But I think it's a 0% chance. I look at it like this. Anthony Richardson can throw the ball in the dirt every single snap for all I care in training camp. First of all, you can't even evaluate the guy just as a pure passer because that's not his game,
Sure.
number one. But number two, I look at it like he's going to start week 1. It's what happens beyond that. Could Daniel Jones supplant him at any point in the season? Because I will say, if it gets topsy-turvy and you nosedive and you have some games where, you can't hit the broadside of a barn, then I do think that there is a world where Daniel Jones could come in and take the job and keep it going into 2026, and then from there, the Colts, in my opinion, would have to just reset at quarterback.
Yeah.
So that to me, I think the real competition, if any of this is real, is week 1. I don't see a world where you pull the plug on the number 4 pick from 2 years ago before you start another game for your franchise. That's my opinion. Now we'll see how true it is because right now, I don't know. I almost thought is this Chris Ballard AI? Like, who is this? Who has been cloned? Has he been kidnapped? Is he safe right now? Because I almost feel like who's at the keys right now? Someone else in the office hitting all these buttons. But so far, it feels different. I think that for Colts fans who are feeling optimistic, why not? I mean, you've been through so much as it is. I'm not saying that you should use a blindly loyal or blindly naive to the state of the team because obviously so much hinges on quarterback. But it's okay to feel good about signing Cam Bynum. It's okay to feel good about adding Travarius Ward. Obviously, you can feel whatever way you want to about Daniel Jones, but I think that making a concerted effort to bring in more competition, to be a man of your word, as Chris Ballard has been, is something that you can feel good about. Now, going forward, you got to keep it up because as I wrote my story the other day, one good meal don't make you no chef now. I understand what DeForest Buckner was saying. One good day in the kitchen don't make you no chef. I should know. I've had some good days in the kitchen, and I come back and I literally drop an egg, drop the ball, whatever. And I'll say all that to say, man, it's gonna be exciting. I do feel a little bit rejuvenated, honestly, Jim, by the offseason moves because I was like, okay, this is different. Will it
Yeah,
work? I don't know, but it is a time where I felt like they invested more than they have. Like, would you agree with that? That's kind of
yeah,
where I'm at.
100%. I think I listen. I think at this time of the offseason, I think everyone feels kind of optimistic for the most part, unless you're, I don't even know, a Cleveland Browns fan, and you have to deal with the Deshaun Watsonness of it all. But yeah, I think this is the time of the year to feel optimistic, and usually this is the time of the year where I think Colts fans feel left out of that optimism. Right? They all go in with all these big eyes on at these free agents they want the Colts to add. Chris Ballard never adds any of them, or he typically never adds any of them. You usually get some interesting guys later on. Some of them work out, some of them don't. You wrote about it, but hey, day one of free agency, he made two splashes. Day two, he added the competition he promised he was going to add for Anthony Richardson. I think you have every right to feel optimistic right now if you're a
Even the
Colts
way
fan.
the deals are structured, like
Yeah,
the
different.
deals are different. Restructuring Braden Smith, which I mean, the Colts really haven't done that in the past.
They don't.
They haven't restructured, so they're moving and operating like a team that I believe is trying to be serious, and we'll see how serious they are as free agency rolls on. So until next time, thank you all for stopping by. We'll check back in next week with perhaps more news. I don't know how much chefing is left for Chris Ballard, how much money is left in the bank, but so far it feels different, and I'm excited to continue to cover it all for you at the Athletics. So until next time, my friends.